Have you ever stayed in a relationship not because it felt right, but because it felt like it was either your best or only option? Have you ever said to yourself, this might be as good as it gets now, or I shouldn't risk losing someone who accepts me in my condition? If so, you're not alone. After a herpes diagnosis, a lot of people start believing their dating pool is smaller, not because they want to settle, but because they think they have to. And once that belief sets in, it starts shaping who you choose, what you tolerate, and how much of yourself you're willing to compromise just to stay in a relationship. So today, I'm going to walk you through how this mindset develops, how it shows up in your dating life without you realizing it, and what actually changes when you stop making choices from limitation and start choosing from what you want and deserve. Hi, I'm Kat Dupree, and I help people to navigate life with herpes. This episode is part 6 of the Shift Your Mindset About Herpes series, and today we're talking about something that doesn't get talked about enough. The belief that your dating options are smaller now because of your diagnosis. Maybe you've stayed in a relationship that didn't feel right, not because you were happy, but because you believed that finding someone else would be a lot harder now. And trust me, I've been there. And what I've learned is this. When you start making choices from the belief that your options are limited, you don't just settle in relationships, you start abandoning yourself. So this episode is about recognizing that pattern so that you could stop choosing from scarcity and start choosing from what actually feels right for you. After a herpes diagnosis, something subtle starts happening for a lot of people. You start making different choices about relationships and what's possible for you now. And it's not because you want to, as if you woke up one day and you chose to want less for yourself. What happens instead is that what you once thought was possible now feels impossible. And that's what I like to call the scarcity trap. So what exactly is the scarcity trap? Well, it's the mindset that convinces you that because of your diagnosis, your options are limited and that your dating pool is much smaller now. So you start making choices based on what you think you can get instead of what you not only want, but deserve. You may say things like, I shouldn't be too picky now, or I can't expect the same things I did before. And the thing about these thoughts is that they don't sound extreme. I mean, they sound practical and realistic. And over time, they start shaping your decisions. Maybe you date someone you know isn't a fit for you because you feel that's all you can get. Maybe you stay in a relationship longer than you should because someone accepts your diagnosis. You start tolerating behavior you never would have before, and worse, you talk yourself out of your own wants and needs just because you want to be in a relationship so badly. That's how the scarcity trap works. It quietly convinces you that having someone is better than being single, even if that someone isn't what you want or isn't treating you the way you deserve. And when you start believing your value depends on being chosen, you stop choosing yourself. And this is where settling begins. Now, once the scarcity trap starts shaping your choices, it usually shows up in one specific way. After a diagnosis, someone being okay with your condition can start to feel like the most important thing. It feels like relief, like proof that you're still wanted, which totally makes sense. But here's what actually happens. Instead of asking yourself if you actually feel good in the relationship or if this person truly meets you where you are, the question slowly becomes, do they accept me? And when that becomes the main focus, everything else starts to matter less. You start overlooking things you would have paid attention to before. You notice you don't feel fully seen or valued, but you talk yourself out of it. You minimize your needs because you don't want to ask for too much. You might even hear yourself thinking, This isn't perfect, but nobody is. And without realizing it, your standards start to drop. Not because you don't know what you want, but because you started believing that wanting more could cost you a relationship altogether. But here's the thing. Someone can accept your diagnosis and still not show up for you emotionally. Someone can accept you and still leave you feeling alone. And someone can accept you and still not be right for you. Trust me, I've been there and I've settled for much less than I deserved. But when you stay in something just because they accept your diagnosis, you end up tolerating things that slowly wear you down over time. And that's how choosing from scarcity keeps you stuck. Not by telling you that you don't deserve more, but by quietly convincing you that more isn't available to you. Okay, now let's talk about what this actually does to you. Because choosing from scarcity doesn't just affect your relationships. It ultimately affects how you see yourself. Over time, you start second-guessing your own instincts. You know something isn't right, but you convince yourself it is. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive or expecting too much. And the more you do that, the harder it becomes to trust your own judgment. You start holding back parts of yourself to keep the peace. You stop bringing things up because you don't want to rock the boat, and you convince yourself that this is just how relationships are now. But deep down, you know that's not true. You see, there's a difference between compromise and self-abandonment. And when you're choosing from scarcity, that line gets really blurry. For example, you might find yourself feeling resentful without fully understanding why. You might feel disconnected from yourself, even though you're not technically alone. You might start wondering how you ended up here when this isn't what you wanted. And the longer you stay in that place, the more normal it starts to feel. Not because it's healthy, but because you've adjusted to it. That's the real cost of choosing from scarcity. It doesn't blow up your life overnight. Instead, it slowly convinces you to live with less than what actually feels right for you. But the issue isn't about your worth because of your diagnosis. It's about living from a belief that what you want isn't within your reach anymore. Now, this is the part that I really want you to hear. When you stop choosing from scarcity, something important happens. You stop making decisions just to avoid being alone, and you stop choosing from what feels comfortable over what feels right. Choosing yourself means you stop lowering your standards, and it also means that you decide that settling is no longer an option. For a long time after my diagnosis, I believed that my choices were limited. I truly thought that what I wanted before herpes was no longer available to me, that I needed to adjust my expectations and be realistic. That even meant dating only people with herpes, and that everyone else was off limits. But the moment I stopped living from that belief, everything changed. Not overnight, but it did happen. I also used the courage that I developed, which I talked about in the last episode, to show up as myself, take it or leave it, to keep putting myself out there, and to stop negotiating my wants and needs just to feel chosen. And once I chose to live from this mindset instead, I realized something. Everything was still on the table. Love, connection, partnership, and the kind of relationship I not only wanted but deserved, which I have now. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to just hope this is possible for you. I want you to know it is. You don't have to stay in situations that don't feel right just because someone accepts your diagnosis. You don't have to limit your life and choices just to feel safe. And you don't have to give up on what you want to protect yourself from disappointment. Choosing yourself means knowing that you are allowed to want more. It means believing that your diagnosis doesn't get to define what your life looks like. And it also means having the courage to be yourself and to be open and vulnerable until what you want shows up. That's how you stop choosing from scarcity. not by settling, but by choosing yourself over and over again. So, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with these final thoughts. 1. Scarcity isn't something you choose. It's something you slowly adapt to. After diagnosis, your sense of what's possible can quietly change. You don't decide to want less. You just start believing less is available, and you have the power to change that. 2. Acceptance alone is not enough. Someone can accept your diagnosis and still not meet you where you are emotionally, mentally, or physically. Acceptance doesn't equal alignment, so don't accept anything less than what you deserve. 3. Choosing from scarcity doesn't just affect your relationships. It affects how you see yourself. Over time, you start second-guessing your instincts, minimizing your needs, and adjusting to situations that don't actually feel right. This is your cue to stop choosing from limitation and start choosing from what you want. 4. Settling isn't practical. It's giving up on yourself. When you believe you can't have better, you start accepting less. Not because it's what you want, but because you're convinced that that's all that's available to you now. The moment that you stop believing that is the moment you stop settling and you start choosing yourself first. 5. Your diagnosis doesn't get to define what's possible for your life. When you stop choosing from scarcity and start choosing yourself, everything is back on the table. Love, connection, and the kind of relationship you actually want is possible. This isn't wishful thinking. This is what becomes reality when you stop letting scarcity decide everything for you. Well, that's all I have for today. I truly hoped that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you haven't subscribed yet, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on audio, please be sure to do that so that you don't miss out on future episodes, especially the ones in this series. Also, if you're tired of navigating your condition alone, come and join us at Herpes Wellness. Membership gives you access to a private online community with forums where you can ask questions, make friends, find love, and get support from people who truly get what you're going through. If you want support on the go, you can download the Herpes Wellness app, available in both the App Store and in Google Play. The links to our website and the app are in the description. And if you're concerned about privacy, we've got you totally covered. The app icon and push notifications say H Wellness, so if someone happens to see your screen, you won't disclose your status unintentionally. And if you're enjoying this podcast, or if you have something you'd like to share, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you the next time on the Herpes Wellness Podcast. Bye for now.